Hi there everybody, welcome back to the channel, and welcome today to this 1500 point Tempest War game between the Genestealer cults and the Ultramarines. Having rid this section of a ruined Imperial world of the filthy taint of Chaos Worshippers, the Scions of Guilliman have found a second threat hiding deep below the surface: the servants of the Four-Armed Emperor. Today, for our mission, we have a primary of Claim the Battlefield, so control 1 objective marker for 5 points, control 2 for 5 points, and 2 VP for anything that is currently claimed. We have Spearhead Assault Deployment, so the arrows with the 9-inch bubble cut out of the center. And our mission rule today is Secret Intel, so we're only going to get our CP if the Warlord is on the field or in a transport that is currently on the field. As you can see, we've got the majority of the forces deployed, but with the Genestealer cults, that means lots of blip markers. So we will go through the armies as they are deployed and then start the game. For the forces of the Genestealer cult, we are going to be running them as Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor. Starting down below in Underground will be our Warlord, the Patriarch, with a Psychic Familiar. He's going to have Paranatural Speed, so rerolling hits in close combat and fight first. He'll also have Might from Beyond and Mass Hypnosis for his psychic powers. Joining him underground is the Kellermorph, no upgrades there, and a force of 10 Acolyte hybrids in underground with a banner, with a rock cutter and a rock saw. On the field, the only thing currently exposed is our unit of 3 Achilles Bridge Runners with the flares to make use of their pre-game move. We also have a blip here, second blip here, focused on the center, and then we've gone heavy in terms of blips over here, defending our home objective, and one off to the side over here. Hiding under the blips are going to be 2 identical squad of Acolyte hybrids with 2 heavy rock saws, and the leaders are going to be Lashwhip Bonesword. Both of those are going to be riding in an Achilles Rock Grinder with the heavy mining laser. We also, for one of our HQ choices, have a Magus with Undermine and Psionic Blast. 5-man unit of Aberrants, also hiding under a blip. A Nexos. The Sniper Lady on bike, who I'm currently forgetting the name of. And then this pile of 20 Acolyte hybrids, or not Acolyte, Neophyte hybrids, with a mining laser and seismic cannon, who are probably going to be camped out on our backfield objective for the majority of the game. So that's the forces of the Xenos Worshippers. Now let's take a look at the Emperor's actual chosen of the Adeptus Astartes. Swinging over to the other side of the battlefield, we have the Ultramarines, led up by a Primaris captain, who is going to be having the Burning Blade and Imperium Sword combo. Next to him is a Chief Apothecary with Selfless Healer, 3-man Blade Guard Veteran Squad, Redemptor Dreadnought with bolters in the chest and the Onslaught Gatling and a Flamer in his fist. He also does have the Icarus Rocket Pod. Right next to them is an Impulsor with a Shield Dome, no Stubber on top because of points, and a 5-man Intercessor Squad inside. A single ATV right off to the side with the Multi-Melta. Our second in command is the Primaris Lieutenant, who is going to be bolstering the forces of this 5-man Devastator squad with 2 las cannons and 2 plasma cannons. They also have an Armorian Cherub. Infiltrating up the field are a 10-man squad of infiltrators camping out onto one of the no man land objective and hoping to bring the forces of the four-armed emperor off to a side to deal with them. And then finally on this side we have a second impulsor, no shield dome on this one, but with the stubber on top, with an identical 5-man squad of intercessors to claim this no man's land objective. So we have one in this big ruin here, one right next to this big contraction of the fallen chaos icon, and then the third no man's land objective here with the infiltrators. For terrain today, we've got a mix of Games Workshop and third-party terrain. So all of the ruins are going to be counting as obscuring ruins. I'm going to count this whole thing as one big footprint. So we've got one big ruin here, and then same thing in the opposite side. So that big footprint will count as one gigantic set of obscuring terrain. We're going to count the crates and the chaos icon in the middle as obscuring and not breachable, so you have to go around it, can't go through it, can't go on it. And we also have 3 craters that are going to act as craters to slow down some of the movement across the battlefield. So with terrain and the armies out of the way, we're good for the roll-off. Rolling off for first turn, we're going to go with the red die for the cultists and blue die for the Ultramarines. And with a 4 for the cult of the four-armed emperor, looks like it is going to be Genestealer cults turn 1 as we begin the battle. As we start the battle, the forces of the Genestealer cult deploy in earnest. So we have one rock grinder down here, the neophytes protecting a trio of characters and the home field objective. The Ridge Runners have fanned out to their right. The second rock grinder is here towards the center, and the Aberrants make ready to burst into the infiltrators. In terms of objectives, or secondaries rather, we need to investigate site, get no retreat, no surrender, and battlefield supremacy. We did not get our battle forward CP since the Patriarch is underground, so we're going to be staying at 12 CP to start, not spending anything for extra warlord traits, extra relics. We also have no Genestealer cult specific point upgrades, the preparations and weight. So that is it for the start of the turn. We're going to go through the command phase and movement phase. No psychic phase, as the Magus is going to be out of sight of everybody and the Patriarch is off the board. So we'll get moving and then come back to you at the start of shooting. Moving out across the battlefield, we have claimed and pinned in the Ultramarines. One squad of the Acolytes did have to get out, and they are going to perform the investigate site action. So not the best use of them with the 2 rock saws, but hopefully that 5 points will be a good lead starting the game for us. Aberrants are eyeing up a charge, nothing to do in the shooting phase there. We've got both of the rock grinders sighted in with some of their weaponry, as are the Ridge Runners. The Nexos was able to put a crossfire marker on the Redemptor to hopefully take out some of the heavy armor in the first round of shooting for the cult. So with that, we're going to go right on into it. We're going to start with the Ridge Runners, firing their 3 heavy mining lasers into the Redemptor, and all their small arms fire into the Blade Guard veterans. Starting off with the heavy mining laser, it's going to be 3d3 shots into the Redemptor for a total of 2, 4, 5 shots. And we're going to be hitting on 3s with the crossfire marker. 4 hits, 3s to wound. That's going to be 2 wounds going into the Redemptor Dreadnought. And I think this is where we're going to want to spend a command reroll just to try to get as much damage as possible. That's going to be 3 at -3 AP, going to -2 for Armor of Contempt. So 5 up saves from the Redemptor. And with 665, we will make it quite handily there. Now we'll gather up our dice for all of the stubbers into the Blade Guard. 18 shots hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s, and then 2 up armor saves thanks to the Storm Shields. 4, no damage taken, so it looks like the Ridge Runners have unfortunately whiffed there. So we'll move on to our next shots. We're going to go on to this Rock Grinder, and everything that it's got is going to go right on through to the Impulsor. D3 shots for our heavy mining laser. It's going to be 3 shots. Hitting on 4s for 2 hits, and then wounding on 3s. 2 wounds at -3 going to -2. And with the armor or the dome, we have a 5 up save. Make 1, fail 1. And we are going to take that. So that'll be d6 damage going into the Impulsor for only 1 damage from the heavy mining laser. Next up for our shots are going to be the Neophyte hybrids, and I'm spending 1, bringing us down to 10 for the cultists for masked firearms. So 6s will automatically wound the target. Looking for some automatic wounds going through from the mining laser and the seismic cannon. So everything that can is going to reach out and touch the Redemptor. After all was said and done, we've got 1 from the mining laser to save at AP -2, so a 5 up. Will not make it from the mining laser, and then 3 from the seismic cannon at a 4 up. Will make 1, fail 2. So those seismic cannons were the long or the short wave. That's going to be 2 damage a time, going down to 1 damage a time. So 2 damage taken from the seismic cannon, and then d6 -1 for a total of 1 damage from the mining laser. So 3 wounds taken off in total. We're going to keep up with the heavy guns. This second Rock Grinder is going to fire its mining laser into the Redemptor, and its stubber is going to go into the Devastators. So D3 shots for the heavy mining laser will be 2 shots, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, and then saving on 5s for the Redemptor. And that is going to be d6 a time. So I'm going to tick myself down. I think the Ultramarines will want to try to keep the Redemptor healthy, and that succeeds. So it's only 1 damage taken to the Redemptor, and then I'll do the stubber shots into the Devastators. Finally, 1 wound taken off of the Devastator's Sergeant from the heavy stubber, and looking over the table, that is everything that can and has shot. So with this, it is now on to the charge phases. So measured up, this Rock Grinder is 13 away from the Impulsor, so nothing there. The Ridge Runners do not want to charge headlong into the Redemptor and the waiting Blade Guard and Captain. So the 2 chargers are going to be the Aberrants and the Rock Grinder. It's going to be the Aberrants first, and seeing that the Rock Grinder is going to be coming in, I'm going to save Overwatch and the Ultramarines support Overwatch for it. So Aberrants get to charge on through uncontested on a 4 10-inch charge. We'll make it soundly. And then the Rock Grinder will declare a charge into the ATV. And then I will declare Overwatch and support Overwatch from the Ultramarines. So we'll come back after Overwatch has been resolved. After all was said and done, the Rock Grinder took 4 damage on the way in, so he is left on 6 damage, making it easily with an 11 on his charge. We're going to also start the fight phase with the Aberrants, as that would be the only interrupt that would be of any serious consequence. So we are going to start with all of the heavy improvised weapons from the Aberrants, or heavy power weapons, excuse me. So, hitting on 3s, making all of them. And then strength 8, toughness 4, choose to wound, making all of them again. -2 goes to -1, so this is going to be 4-up saves, and every fail is a dead infiltrator. So that is going to be 1, 2, 3 slain. That is going to be 3 infiltrators gone. The Hypermorph also has a heavy improvised weapon, so 3 attacks from him on 3s, and then strength 6, so 3s to wound, 1 wound at -1, going to AP -none, makes it there, and then finally just his Hypermorph tail. 1 hits on a 3 to wound, 1 wound, AP -none, 1 damage. So that will be 3 dead and 1 damaged. And then we will go on to the Rock Grinder next. The Drill Dozer Blade from the Rock Grinder has gone through for 6 wounds at -2, going to -1 AP. This is going to be 4-ups. And then that is looking like a total of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 damage on the ATV. Went ahead and did the Infiltrator swings back, winding up with 4 wounds. So 4 5-up saves, make 1, fail 3, so that'll be 3 damage going through to the Aberrants. And then that will wrap up the fight phase and the turn. So, we have 1 Aberrant missing, 3 of the Infiltrators taken out, the ATV has been destroyed, and both this Rock Grinder and the Redemptor were damaged in the first round for the Cult. In terms of secondary scored, we got Investigate Site, working on No Retreat, No Surrender. Unfortunately, we were not able to kill off enough of the Infiltrators to claim this 3rd objective, but we still have a lot of board presence, so I'm going to hold on to that. So that'll be 5 secondary points scored for the Cultists as we go into Ultramarines Turn 1. At the start of Battle Round 1 for the Ultramarines, we have gone down to 4 CP thanks to needing new orders to get rid of Blood and Guts. So we have Attempting Target, Grind Them Down, and Investigate Site. Apparently there's something very, very interesting about this Chaos icon in the center. And the Tempting Target has also been declared to be the objective marker right there with the 5-man Acolytes on it. Now, what took me down to 4? Well, I took 1 CP for Wisdom of the Ancients in my command phase to give the Redemptor Tactical Precision, so reroll wounds of 1 in an aura, and I've also decided to deploy an Orbital Bombardment. So it's definitely an expensive CP, or CP-wise, but the orbital bombardment in my next turn is going to come on down into the home field objective of the cultists. So they will either have the choice to stay on their home field or take some damage. With that, we have our home field objective held by the lieutenant. We have a rock grinder right up in our grill, and a lot of cultists to start trying to get rid of. So we'll come back to you at the end of movement and at the start of Ultramarines shooting in turn 1. We've moved on up the board with the Ultramarines, advancing up with the Impulsor on this flank and letting out the Intercessors onto this no man's land objective. The Ridge Runners are hopefully going to be taken care of by the Redemptor, Blade Guard, Apothecary, and Captain. Over here, we fell back out of our combats and let the second squad of Intercessors out. And the Infiltrators are opened up for a little bit of shooting. But we will start the shooting phase with the Devastators unleashing all of their heavy weapons into the rock grinder in our front lines. We're going to start with the plasma cannons from the Devastators, getting a total of 4 shots, hitting on 3s, not choosing to overcharge, so we are going to be wounding on 4s, rerolling our 1s to wound, thanks for the Lieutenant being nearby, not getting a 4 to wound, but that's going to be 3 at AP minus 3. So a 6-up save will not make it on any of those. That's going to be 3 damage taken to the rock grinder. Next up will be the 2 las cannons on the 3 wound rock grinder. The red die is going to be hitting on a 2. Regular one's going to be hitting on a 3. So, wounding on 3s and double 2s, and I think that will be what we try to use a CP reroll for. So that will be 1 at a 6-up save. Not enough, so we are looking for a 4 or better for the d6 damage of the las cannon to take it out. And only 1 damage there. We'll bring it back into 2 wounds. We'll spend our Armorian Cherub to try to do that same thing again and miss right off the bat. So, 2 wounds left on that rock grinder, and then we will move on to our next round of shooting. Next up to try to take out that rock grinder, the 5-man Intercessor squad that just got out of the Impulsor will fire all of our butt rifles for 3s and 5s, rerolling 1s. So that is technically enough to do it. If it fails 2 4-up saves, which it in fact does. So with that, we are not going to choose to do anything. We're instead going to spend a CP on Rig to Blow, thanks to having a cache of demo charges in both of these rock grinders to automatically explode. The explosion from the rock grinder ripped through the center of the battlefield, taking off 2 of the Acolytes, 1 of the Intercessors, finishing off the Devastator Sergeant and taking 1 of the Plasma Cannon Marines off, taking 2 wounds off of the Impulsor, shaving 1 wound off of the Captain, and taking a big 3 off of the Redemptor. So the center of the battlefield is a bit shaken up by that, but regardless of that, we are going to have to continue on as the Emperor's Finest. So we are going to go on to the Intercessors here, instead of risk not having something to charge to move us onto the tempting target objective. we're going to throw our bolt rifles into the aberrants. And after that, the infiltrators will also throw their shots downrange into the remaining aberrants. If you were confused by that last part, I don't blame you, because I forgot that it was the intercessors' shots that actually were able to take the rock grinder out. So never mind that they shot at the aberrants. I did do the infiltrators into them, and unfortunately they only did 1 wound. So it looks like in turn 2, the infiltrators are going to have another charge from aberrants to look forward to. With that, we've got the infiltrator shot, the intercessor shot, the devastator shot. This impulsor is actually going to choose not to shoot at anything. So we are going to move on to this blob in the center, and all of their guns are going to go into the 3 ridge runners. After everything was said and done, this group of shots were able to clear out 1 of the ridge runners. Next up, we're going to go on to our final kind of grouping of shots, and everything from the intercessors and this impulsor is going to try to chip down the rock grinder that is right in front of us. So from the bolt rifles of the intercessors, we're going to be looking for 3s, and then looking for 5s to wound, 2 at -1 going to a 4-up save for a 1 and a 2, so that'll be 2 damage taken on the rock grinder. Then we're going to go on to the impulsor with its 2 frag storm grenade launchers, so 2d6 shots, total of 4 shots on 3s, and a 5, nothing there. And then finally the Iron Hail Heavy Stubber, heavy 4 on 3s and 5s, another 2 at -2 AP, since that is a heavy weapon, so that'll be 2 more damage for a total of 4 taken, 6 wounds remaining on the rock grinder. In the charge phase, we are going to get started over here, and we are going to begin with the Redemptor Dreadnought going into the 2 ridge runners, which will spend a CP bringing the cult down to 8 to fire Overwatch at the Redemptor. So we will resolve Overwatch and then come back to you after this group has charged into the ridge runners. Unfortunately for the Ultramarines, thanks to the -2 charge penalty for the flare launchers, nobody over here got in with a charge, saving my CP in case I needed it for the intercessors to make it to the center objective, which of course I didn't. So the intercessors and the center were the only ones to make a successful charge. So this central death ball is going to kind of be out in the open, unfortunately. But we'll go and resolve this one fight quickly, and then come back to you at the end of the turn to see what the Ultramarines can score. That charge did not work out the way that the Ultramarines were hoping. The lone survivor was able to fend off the singular bone saw and the bone sword from the 2 remainers, but unfortunately he is now outnumbered on the objective, so we're not going to claim our tempting target. And we also are at risk of some morale, so we're going to go into the morale phase. So we lost 4 for that lone intercessor, 4, 7, he'll be fine. Then they lost 2 here for the acolytes, 2 plus 8, I think they might be fine. Yep, they're still fine because of the leader, but just barely. In terms of anybody else who lost, we lost 2 for the Devastators, so they are fine. So luckily nobody's running from morale, but unfortunately we are not looking so good in terms of objectives or our hold on the board. You can also just check our secondaries. So we didn't get Investigate Site, we did not claim the Tempting Target since we're still outnumbered, and Grind Them Down. I do not believe we killed any full units. We did kill the one rock grinder after double checking, so that did put us up to a tally of 1. But unfortunately, I think I'm going to get rid of both Attempting Target and Investigate Site, just so that they are out of the way going forward. And unfortunately, that is going to be a big goose egg in terms of points scored for the Ultramarines as we wrap up round 1. We do have the Orbital Bombardment coming in, which is hopefully going to wipe out a decent chunk of the backfield objective holders. But we also do have the objective, or not the objectives, the reinforcements coming in for the Genestealer cults. So that'll take us into round 2. In our second round for the Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor, looks like the cards and everything continue to favor us. We drew no prisoners, secure no man's land, and still have battlefield supremacy. So we are currently up to 20 points thanks to scoring no retreat, no surrender, and being on 2 objective markers. We did not claim any in the first battle round, so we might start having to do that. In the command phase, the Nexus put a free crossfire marker onto the Redemptor, and the Sniper also said to treat the Redemptor as exposed. So, hoping to take out the Redemptor, and then cut out the heart of the army from the center. So with that, we're going to go on through movement and see what can pop up at the end of movement phase. And the Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor moved to tighten the noose around the necks of the lapdogs of the Emperor upon the Golden Throne. So, where the objective is about to be bombed, I moved the characters out of the way, and the Sniper has moved on up to hopefully start taking some pot shots at characters. The Neophytes will probably get the full blast of the bombardment, but no real way that I could have avoided that. Over here, the 5-man Acolyte squad has gotten out and eyes up a charge at the Intercessors, while the 10-man squad comes up from underground to charge from the back. The Ridge Runners didn't really see a need to move, so they did not. And in the back, the Patriarch and Kellermorph have popped up to start sniping some of the heart out of the center, while the Aberrants simply move around a bit to take out more of the infiltrators, since I could not come up within 12 inches of them with any of my deep strikers. So with that, we are good to start going on to the Psychic phase. In said Psychic phase, we're going to start off with the Magus. He's going to start off with Psionic Blast, needing a 5, and then just getting it with a 5. So he is going to choose the Intercessors up here, and that is essentially an extra smite for 1 mortal wound onto them. And then he will perform an actual smite onto that same squad on an 8 for another D3 mortals. So another 1 mortal wound. So 2 mortal wounds takes 1 of the Intercessors out. So just chipping away from them. Next up in the Psychic phase, we're going to have the Patriarch go. He's going to start with Mass Hypnosis, needing a 7. With a 6, he's not going to get it, so I'm going to use my Psychic Familiar there to use a free reroll. And then on an 8, he will hypnotize the Blade Guard Veteran Squad, and then he's going to try to juice himself up with Might from Beyond, needing a 6. On a 5, we don't get it, but we'll use a CP reroll, bring us down to 7, and getting it with a 9. So Might from Beyond and Mass Hypnosis have both gone off as we end the Psychic phase and start into the Shooting phase. We're going to start off the Shooting phase with Billy the Nid, my Kellermorph, and all of his guns are going to try to snipe out the Chief Apothecary to make sure that what is dead stays dead after this turn. So that is going to be 3 Liberator auto stubs right into the back of this healer man. After all was said and done, 7 wounds are going through. Primarch Apothecary is also taken 2 mortals, so bringing him down to 3. Those are going to be 7 3-up saves to keep him alive. Ooh, and he gets very, very lucky on his armor saves. So he is still most definitely alive, but now he has a Primarch, or not Primarch, Patriarch, and a Kellermorph at his back. Next up will be this Rock Grinder here on the far flank. So its heavy its heavy mining laser is going to go into the Impulsor, and its stubber is going to fire into the 4-man Intercessor squad left on top of this building. We'll start with the heavy stubber, and then force to wound. 2 wounds at a 2-up save thanks to cover. Make 1 fail 1, so that will plink a single wound off of an Intercessor. And then D3 shots. 1 shot with our heavy mining laser into the Impulsor hits. And wounds. So this is going to be 1 at a 5-up save. Does not make it. That's going to be D6 damage. For 4 damage, taking the Impulsor down to 6. And putting a crossfire marker on it. Next up in the shooting order, we're going to have the Ridge Runners, or the 2 remaining Ridge Runners, fire their heavy mining lasers into the Redemptors, and their heavy stubbers will also go into the Redemptor, just to try to make sure that we can finish it off. 5 wounds have gotten through from the Ridge Runners' heavy mining lasers, so these are going to be 5-up saves. Ooh, make 4 of them, fail 1, so D6 minus 1 damage will be a total of only 1 damage going through from the anti-tank weaponry, and then we'll do the heavy stubbers off camera. Off camera, just to get them out of the way, I did the small arms fire from the 2 squads of acolytes that are flanking the Intercessors. Did 1 more damage, taking the 4th Intercessor off the board. Next up, we're going to declare everything from the Neophytes over on into the Repulsor, using massed firearms yet again, taking it, or hoping to take off its last 3 wounds. The massed firearms of the Neophytes were able to take off the Redemptor, getting us up to a total of 17 on no prisoners. Next up is the Jackal Alphys, and she is going to try to finish the Kellermorph's job of killing the Apothecary. So 1 shot from her sniper rifle on a 2. And then wounding on a 3. And then on a 6. So that'll be a wound and 1 mortal in addition. So 1 wound at -2. That would take the Apothecary out, so I will use a reroll here for the Ultramarines, and that will still not be enough, so that will be 3 damage to the Apothecary, taking him off of the board. With the sniper shot, we are into the charge phase. Just did the Rock Grinder and the Acolytes into their respective targets over here. No chance to fail and no need to overwatch. The 10-man squad will come on back, and they are going to try a 8-inch charge into both the Impulsor and the Intercessors. So 8, rerolling, thanks to being Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor. And with a 7, that will not do it, unfortunately. Next up in the back, we're going to try the Patriarch into the Blade Guard Veterans. On a 7, also not a successful charge, but a free reroll. Gets it in just with an 8. And, of course, the Burning Blade captain would love to heroically intervene there. The Intercessor in the middle is wrapped up. And then, finally, the Aberrants over here will charge in. And it's going to be here that I spend 1 CP, taking the Ultramarines down to 1, to overwatch into the Aberrants, who make it with the greatest of ease on a 4. The Infiltrators were able to take down a single Aberrant in Overwatch, and with only 1 CP remaining for the Ultramarines, there's no chance of interrupts here. So I'm going to just go through all of the close combats, kind of sweep it from one side to the other, and then come back to you as a summary after the fight phase of Genestealer Cults Turn 2. After the worshippers of the Four-Armed Emperor have struck out, here's what we're looking at. The Impulsor was taken out by the Rockgrinder. 2 Intercessors are standing in this squad. 2 of the Blade Guard veterans were killed by the Patriarch. And we also took down 2 more Infiltrators on this flank. So with that, we are going to go on to ongoing combats. So we will start with the Intercessor here before he gets fought back with the 2 Acolytes there, and we'll come back after the Ultramarines have struck back in close combat. And I think at this point, the Sons of Guilliman wish that they were the Sons of Sanguinius, because that was not a great showing back. The Captain and the Blade Guard did absolutely nothing to the Patriarch. 2 of the Acolytes were removed from the 2 remaining Intercessors, and another Aberrant was taken out by the Infiltrators. But at this point, we are definitely looking thin on the ground for the Ultramarines. We also have been forced to grind them down, so we are going to achieve nothing for that round in terms of secondaries. So we are going to have to go on to scoring for the Genestealer Cults. We do secure No Man's Land, so that's going to bring us up to another 5 for 30. Battlefield Supremacy, we actually still do not have, as we have this claimed by the Ultramarines. We have this one and this one, but unfortunately we are still tied on this No Man's Land objective, so a little bit of hope there. Not getting another clean sweep of secondaries, but it is definitely looking very, very, very grim for the Ultramarines. But luckily, the orbital bombardment is about to drop, so maybe that can start clearing out some of the backfield threats as we go into turn 2 for the Ultramarines. Turn 2 with the Ultramarines begins with us scoring 12 points, spending our 1 CP for the round to get rid of capture enemy outpost. So we need to storm a hostile objective, deploy teleport homer, and assassinate. Assassination and deploy or storm hostile objective will hopefully be what we are able to achieve, as there's 1-2 characters right out in our deployment zone, as well as the Jackal Elphys kind of out in the open. We've also got a couple of secondaries out in the center that, or actually rather, I don't know why I'm looking at the one with the infiltrators. They held that, so it's looking like we need to storm this objective, and if possible, deploy a teleport homer, but that's probably not going to be happening anytime soon. The good news is we went off and killed 4 of the neophytes, so that should, at the very least, risk them losing to a couple more to morale. Maybe we'll try to pick off a few more to make sure that is a certainty. But other than that, we need to get going, and we need to get killing very, very badly in turn 2. Not a terribly complicated movement phase. We just fell back with these 2 intercessors here to free up our shooting. The melee fighters against the Patriarch have stayed put. The remaining Impulsor has moved on up, and the Lieutenant is just barely able to see the 2 Acolytes there to hopefully claim that objective. The Devastators, very, very, very luckily, can just see the 2 remaining Ridge Runners, so hopefully we'll be able to take some of them out. And then finally the Infiltrators fell back out of combat yet again to hopefully gun down the remaining 2 Aberrants in that squad. So we're going to come back. This will probably have to be a summary of the shooting phase. So the guns of the Marines will fly, and we'll come back to you in a summary. After the shooting phase, here's how we're looking in terms of enemies left. We have 1 Aberrant remaining for the Infiltrators to continue to deal with. The Impulsor and, unfortunately, the Devastators and the Lieutenant had to be dealing with the Acolytes here. But we did claim that objective, so that's going to bring us up 5 more points to 17. Pistols didn't do anything to the Patriarch, and these 2 Intercessors shot out and picked off 2 more of the Neophytes, bringing them up to 6 killed. So hopefully that will be an issue in the morale phase. But at this point there is nothing to do in the charge phase, and in the fight phase we only have ongoing combats. So it is going to be the Patriarch first, and he is going to try to cut down the Primaris Captain so that the head is off of the Ultramarines' body of war. Our Captain is no more, so that is going to be no more CP for the Ultramarines now that my Warlord is dead. So I am down to absolutely 0 left after using a reroll in the attempts to save the Captain's life. The Patriarch did take 2 wounds from the lone remaining Sergeant of the Blade Guards, but at the end of the turn, we are not going to get deployed Teleport Homer, and we're going to definitely throw that one away. Assassination probably is easier for the Ultramarines to get compared to a lot of armies that they might be going against, but we're still probably not going to be able to get to it. And with morale an issue back here, we'll roll a 1, so they are insanely brave. So the attempts to make them flee turned out for naught. So I think the painting is on the wall, or the writing is on the wall, not the painting. On the wall is where the painting is supposed to be. So we will try to wrap things up swiftly as we go into Genestealer Cults turn 3. Turn 3 with the Genestealer Cults. We are only on 1 objective right now, so we're only on 35 points after primary is scored. We did get rid of overwhelming firepower, so we need to get behind enemy lines, a storm hostile objective, and claim battlefield supremacy. In the command phase, I decided that I've had enough with these infiltrators, so I put a crossfire marker on them. And the neophytes will probably be moving out to try to take them off of the board, while the rest of the army cleans up what we can. Here we are at the beginning of the psychic phase. We have moved on and surrounded the Ultramarines on every front that we could. We're going to start off with the Magus. He is going to start with his Psionic Blast. On a 7, he will make it. And that'll be D3 damage to the Blade Guard. That's going to be 1 damage to the Blade Guard. A Smite into the Blade Guard now. On a 2, will not make it. And we'll try to use the CP there. On a 6, so another D3 damage on to the Blade Guard for 2 more damage, taking the last of that squad off the board. Quickly going on to the Patriarch. He's going to try to give himself Might from Beyond on a 6. Gets it on a 6 exactly, and then we'll try to smite off some wounds from the Impulsor. Getting it with a 7 for a total of 1 more wound taken off the Impulsor. So that's it for the Psychic phase. Now we will come back to you at the end of shooting to summarize. The shots of the Genestealer cults have rang out, leaving this Intercessor a lone man, bringing the Impulsor down to 2 wounds. Kellermorph took out the Lieutenant and moved closer to perhaps make a long bomb charge onto the home objective and deal with these Devastators. And 2 more of the Infiltrators have been killed. Now we're on to Chargers. We're going to have the Patriarch go into the Impulsor on an 8. Makes it in soundly. We'll do a long bomb charge of the Kellermorph into the Devastators. On a 6, won't do it. On a 7, still won't do it. And the 1 Aberrant will crash back in, try to take down his hated enemies, the Infiltrators. So we will come back to you at the end of the fight phase. Here we are at the end of the fight phase and at the end of the battle. The Patriarch was able to destroy the Impulsor, took 2 wounds off of him in an explosion. The Aberrants have finally been dealt with, but not before taking 1 last Infiltrator down with them. And then this mob of all the Acolytes on this No Man's Land objective easily dispatched the lone remaining Intercessor right there. So, with that, considering there are 3 Devastators, 2 Infiltrators, and plenty of shooting and melee threats to slowly close the noose on this little sliver of the battlefield still under Imperial control, we're going to call that a definitive victory for the Genestealer cults. So perhaps in the lore of this world, the lore of this battlefield, the forces of chaos were victorious, even though they were not present on the battlefield, as their shrine looked over a bloodbath of the loyal lapdogs of the Corpse Emperor. So perhaps as we fade to black, some eldritch energies start to spark in the Noctilith crown, and the warp tears into the materium, so that even the aberrants and the abominants of the Genestealer cult are not the worst things to walk this world soon enough. But, that being said, hope everybody enjoyed the battle. If you did, please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and consider leaving a comment and spreading the message of the channel. Really appreciate it if you guys would help me spread the word of Solo Hammer and help a guy out in his hobby. But with that, I will say goodbye, and I will see all of you folks on the next battlefield of the 41st millennium.